My name's Carter, and I'm 29. I live in New York now. Not just anywhere, but in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows, polished marble, my own private elevator. But if you ask my family, they'd probably still describe me as Vanessa's quiet little brother. Not because I am quiet, but because they never really listened. I guess every family has their favorite. Ours didn't even pretend to hide it. Vanessa, my older sister by 2 years, has always been the golden child. Since birth, she was the first one to walk, the one who got a solo in the school musical, the girl with the perfect prom dress. And me, I was the kid who didn't need much. That was Mom's way of justifying things. Carter doesn't mind, she'd say with a wave of her hand whenever someone questioned why Vanessa got yet another gift or why my birthday was just a small dinner at home while hers was a backyard carnival with a rented DJ and ice sculpture. It was like watching someone be handed the sun while you're told, hey, there's still starlight, that counts too, right? I didn't resent Vanessa at first, not when we were little. She was just my big sister and I thought she was cool. She painted her nails in weird colors, blasted music in her room, and taught me how to tell fake friends from real ones. But over time, it changed. She started treating me the same way everyone else in our family did, like I was some background prop in the movie of her life, smiling when the camera was on, dismissing me when it wasn't. My mom, Janice, didn't help. She was obsessed with appearances. Holiday cards had to be color-coordinated, social media posts were curated like museum exhibits, and Vanessa, she was the centerpiece, the future doctor, the beauty with brains, the pride of the family. I still remember Mom bragging at Thanksgiving dinner. Vanessa got into Cornell, early decision. Then, almost as an afterthought, she turned to me and said, "Carter, are you still doing computer stuff?" I had just landed my first paid internship at a software startup, but I didn't say anything. I just smiled and passed the gravy. That was the game. Stay quiet, stay small, stay out of the way. I got good at it until I didn't. Things started shifting after college. I moved to the city, said I was working in IT, which was technically true, but I was also building software on the side. 2 years later, I had my own company. No loans, no help, just code, coffee, and nights spent debugging until my eyes stung. I didn't tell my family, not because I was hiding it, but because they never really asked. I think the first time Vanessa noticed I might have changed was at Dad's retirement dinner. It was at some overpriced country club. We were all crammed around a long table under crystal chandeliers. Vanessa showed up 30 minutes late in a white designer dress like she was walking a red carpet, not coming to honor the man who paid for her tuition. My parents immediately stood up to greet her. My aunt scooted over to make room. Dad clapped like she descended from heaven. I just sat there, sipping my drink. When she finally noticed me, she tilted her head and said, "Oh wow, Carter, you've grown into your face." I smiled. "And you've grown into your personality." There was a beat of silence, and then she laughed like it was a joke, but I meant it. Later that night, as we toasted my dad, Vanessa gave a speech. Long, flowery, dramatic. She quoted Shakespeare at one point, called him my hero, my rock. Everyone clapped. Then my mom nudged me. "Say a few words, sweetie." I stood up, kept it short, thanked Dad for teaching me how to work hard, stay disciplined, and be independent. Simple, but true. As I sat back down, I heard Vanessa whisper to her boyfriend, "He's so awkward," and they both laughed, loud enough for me to hear, loud enough for everyone to pretend they didn't. That night, I walked to the parking lot alone, while Vanessa was surrounded by relatives and friends taking selfies. The thing is, I could have afforded to leave in a town car. I could have flown home in a helicopter if I wanted, but I still drove the same used Honda I bought 5 years ago. Just because I'd outgrown them didn't mean I was done with them. Not yet. Then came Grandma's 80th birthday. Grandma Dottie is the only one in the family who ever treated me like I mattered. She used to mail me books when I was little, sci-fi novels, old computer manuals with little notes in the margins like, "I don't understand this, but I bet you will." We weren't close, but we had a quiet bond. She saw me. I didn't want to miss her big day.
It was a huge gathering at this fancy winery just outside the city. My mom planned it like it was a royal wedding. Matching family shirts, coordinated speeches, a slideshow spanning 8 decades of Grandma's life. Vanessa was, of course, the MC. She wore a pale pink dress and heels that clicked loudly on the wooden floors. Her voice boomed through the mic. She cried at least 3 times during her intro. "This woman raised us," she said dramatically, "and taught me what it means to be a woman of strength and grace." She looked at me when she said grace, then looked away just as fast. I stood near the back with a glass of sparkling water, quietly watching. People circulated, gossiping, laughing. My cousin Maya came over and said, "Hey, is it true you're working in tech? Vanessa said you fix routers or something." I laughed. "Something like that." Then my uncle, Uncle Greg, joined us. "You still in that tiny apartment in Brooklyn?" I shrugged. "Nah, moved." "Oh yeah? Where to? Queens? Manhattan?" I took a sip of my drink. "Upper West." He whistled. "Must be a shoebox." I looked out the window for a second. "Penthouse." They both blinked. Maya laughed. "You're messing with us." I smiled. "Nope. Top floor, 2 balconies, got a pretty clear view of Central Park." I didn't say it to show off. It just came out. For once, I didn't downplay it. Across the room, I saw Vanessa freeze mid-conversation. Her head whipped around. My mom's wine glass trembled in her hand. Uncle Greg stared at me like he was recalibrating the entire image he had of who I was, like I'd stepped out of the shadows and ruined their favorite painting. Then it happened. My mom, who never drank more than 1 glass, suddenly lifted hers and threw it. Red wine splashed across the floor in a perfect arc. She didn't say a word, just stormed toward the back patio like she needed air. Vanessa looked furious, but it wasn't confusion on her face. It was panic. And then Uncle Greg, usually loud and opinionated, said quietly, almost like he was thinking aloud, "Huh, I guess we backed the wrong kid." That was when the room truly went silent. People turned. Grandma blinked. Vanessa's cheeks flushed, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being ignored. I was the center of gravity, and I hadn't even started yet. I didn't say anything for a while after that night, just left the winery with a tight smile and a slow walk back to my car while the rest of them fumbled around in damage control. I didn't owe them an explanation. Not then. Not after decades of pretending I didn't exist unless they needed something moved, fixed, or paid for. But that moment, the wine throw, the silence, Uncle Greg's accidental truth, it was a crack in the wall. And once a wall cracks, it doesn't stay up for long. 2 days later, my mom called. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize for hurling a $14 glass of Merlot across the room in front of 70 family members and friends. She just went straight into it, her voice tight like she was holding her breath. "Carter, you really should have told us about the penthouse." I leaned back on my couch, one leg over the other, staring out at the city skyline through my window. "Why? You weren't interested when I got my first apartment." She ignored that. "It just caught everyone off guard. You made your sister look bad." There it was. Not "you embarrassed me," but "you made Vanessa look bad." I held the phone to my ear and just let it sit there for a second. "Is that what this is about?" Mom's voice hardened. "Don't act like you don't know what you did." "You told Uncle Greg where I live?" He asked. I answered. "You knew how it would make her feel. She's been under a lot of pressure lately, her residency applications." "Mom," I interrupted, "she's 31, same as me. We're adults. She's doing something important with her life." And I wasn't. That was the implication. Has always been. If I wasn't carrying a stethoscope or quoting Shakespeare at parties, I wasn't worth acknowledging. I hung up not long after that. Politely, calmly, but my chest burned for hours. The next week, I got a text from Vanessa. "Vanessa, just wanted to congrats. Mom said you got a nice place." "Thanks, Vanessa. Hope it's not too much pressure having to keep up with something that expensive in the city. Hope med school isn't too much pressure pretending you still like patience." She didn't respond. I'll admit I was a little petty there, but it wasn't just a jab. It was a reference I knew she'd understand.
Years ago, before she started med school, Vanessa confessed to me after a couple glasses of cheap wine on my couch that she didn't even like medicine anymore. She'd picked it because of Mom, because our family worshipped the idea of having Dr. Vanessa on holiday cards. She wanted to paint. She used to sketch these incredible portraits full of color and emotion, but she buried that because being an artist wasn't prestigious enough. Being herself wasn't good enough. She chose their approval over her own happiness. Maybe that's the only thing we had in common, except I eventually stopped chasing it. She didn't. A few months passed. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving. Didn't get invited, actually. Mom sent a group text to the family, complete with a flyer-style invitation she made in Canva, giving thanks with the Taylors, dress code autumn tones. It was nauseating. Vanessa's name was listed right under hosted by in a fancy italic font. My name wasn't on it, not even in the body. So I replied just to test the waters, "What should I bring?" No response, not for hours. Then finally, from my mom, "Actually, it's going to be a small gathering this year, just immediate family." Immediate family, like I was extended. I scrolled through the group list. There were cousins and great aunts on it, people I hadn't seen since I was 12. But I wasn't invited. Not officially, not really. Vanessa didn't say a word. And that's when something shifted inside me. Before, I'd been annoyed, hurt, sure, but still grounded, still rational. I figured they'd always overlook me. That was the pattern. But this was something else. This was a razor. I stared at that message for a long time, and then I did something petty again. I ordered a Thanksgiving meal from a Michelin-starred restaurant. Full spread, truffle stuffing, aged duck, dessert flight, the whole 9 yards, and I posted a single picture on Instagram. My table beautifully set for one against the backdrop of the Manhattan skyline. No caption, just a photo. Vanessa viewed it, so did Mom and Grandma. No one liked it, but I knew they saw it. That was enough. Christmas was worse. Not only was I not invited, they lied to me. Around mid-December, Vanessa texted, "Hey, just so you're in the loop, we're keeping it simple this year. Everyone's doing their own thing. No big family Christmas." I said, "Cool, hope you enjoy it." Christmas morning. I got curious, just a hunch. So I checked Facebook. Vanessa had gone live. There she was in a giant living room decked out in gold ornaments, standing in front of a 10-foot Christmas tree, surrounded by piles of wrapped gifts. My mom and dad were in matching pajamas. Grandma was there holding her classic spiked eggnog. Cousins, aunts, even Uncle Greg. Everyone. Except me. I didn't watch the whole video, just enough to feel the knot in my stomach harden into something sharp. Just enough to hear someone, I think it was my mom, say in the background, "It's better without Carter's mood." That one stuck. I didn't text them, didn't call, just shut the app and sat there in silence, the lights from my own tree reflecting off the windows. Alone, but strangely clear-headed, because something broke that day. And sometimes when something breaks, you stop tiptoeing. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into their frame, and instead, you start building your own. It didn't happen overnight, but that moment, that fake-out Christmas, that was the last time I let myself be the quiet one in the background. And I wish I could say it ended there, that I just cut them off and moved on, but no, the real betrayal hadn't happened yet. That came in spring. March, to be exact, just as the snow started to melt and the air in Manhattan turned sharp with possibility. I got a call from Grandma Dottie. She rarely called, usually just sent postcards, sometimes an email with no subject line. But this time she called. "Carter, honey," she said, her voice warm but shaky. "I need a favor." "Anything," I said immediately. "I need you to come with me to the lawyer's office." That was new. "Are you okay?" "Oh, I'm fine, just getting my affairs in order. Thought you should be there. I'm changing some things." I didn't press, just told her I'd meet her. When I showed up, she gave me a long hug and told me how proud she was. Said she saw my name in some business article. "Your company was in Forbes," she whispered like it was a secret. I smiled. "You read Forbes now?" "I read everything if it mentions my grandson." We sat in a quiet office overlooking the Hudson while her lawyer, a sharp woman in her 60s, went through a revised will.
I didn't even know Grandma had that much to leave, but apparently she did. A house, stocks, old paintings, some cash accounts, and she had left the majority of it, not to my mom, not to Vanessa, but to me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want to be in the middle of anything. Grandma just patted my hand and said, "You've always made your own way. No one gave you anything. This is just me giving back." I swallowed. "You sure this won't cause problems?" She laughed, dry and small. "Oh, honey, the problems already exist." A week later, Vanessa found out, and everything exploded. I didn't find out how Vanessa learned about the will changes right away. I'd never been told explicitly to keep it quiet, but Grandma and I had a mutual understanding. We weren't broadcasting it. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about money. It was about acknowledgement, legacy, a quiet thank you from the only person in my family who ever really saw me. But Vanessa didn't see it that way. It started with a text. "Vanessa, we need to talk, now." I stared at it for a minute before responding. Me, "Everything okay?" Vanessa, "Did you manipulate Grandma?" I blinked, literally laughed out loud. The accusation was so absurd, I thought it had to be a joke. But I knew her tone. I knew how sharp she could be when she was cornered, like a fox with a law degree. Her claws came out when control slipped through her fingers. "Excuse me?" "Vanessa, I just spoke to Mom. She heard from Aunt Celia, who heard from Grandma's neighbor, who saw you leaving her lawyer's office. So I'll ask again, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything. Grandma made her own choices." "Don't be smug. This isn't over." And just like that, she went nuclear. The next few weeks were quiet on the surface, but behind the scenes I started getting waves of subtle backlash. My mom stopped replying to my texts entirely, not even a passive-aggressive thumbs up. My dad, who usually played the neutral middleman, called and left a message that was just a long sigh followed by, "I hope you're happy." Then came the email. It was long, too long, clearly written after days of stewing, maybe even a few therapy sessions. Subject line, "You need to understand what you've done." Vanessa outlined every perceived injustice she had suffered, how she had carried the family legacy, how she had sacrificed years of her life to study medicine while I played around with apps, and how Mom had bent over backward to keep the peace between us, and how I had shattered that peace with one selfish act. I reread this line 3 times. "You manipulated Grandma when she was vulnerable." That one hit hard, not because I believed it, but because I realized she did. She truly believed I'd somehow schemed my way into Grandma's will like a soap opera villain, that I'd hovered over an elderly woman whispering poison into her ear. She couldn't imagine that someone in the family, someone not named Vanessa, could be chosen simply because they deserved it. It cracked me open in a weird way. Hurt, yes, but more than that, clarity. That was the first time I fully accepted that she didn't see me as a person, not really. She saw me as a narrative obstacle, a shadowy footnote, and now I'd stepped out of line and taken up too much space, and the family followed her lead. That spring was cold, not just literally. New York was still shaking off winter, but emotionally, I went days without a single message from home. No one called to ask how I was doing, no invites, no thinking of you texts. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just overlooked, I was excluded. And yeah, it got to me more than I cared to admit. There were nights I just sat in my penthouse, this beautiful, ridiculous place I dreamed about owning since I was a broke 21-year-old with duct-taped shoes, and I felt hollow, like I'd built this life, climbed out of the mud and planted a flag, only to realize no one cared. Worse, they resented me for it. I stopped checking Instagram, stopped taking phone calls from unknown numbers. I went into what I called maintenance mode. Wake up, shower, work, gym, sleep, on repeat. No joy, just survival.
The lowest point came in late April. I was supposed to be a guest speaker at a startup conference. Nothing huge, a side event at some WeWork-style venue.
But the organizer knew me from a forum I'd helped moderate back in the day, and she'd invited me to talk about scaling a product team. I said yes. But that morning, I woke up, stared at the mirror, and couldn't do it. Couldn't move. Couldn't put on the nice blazer or the fake smile or the confident voice I usually summon from nowhere. Instead, I emailed the organizer and made up an excuse. Said I had a fever, food poisoning, anything to not show up. Then I sat on the floor of my kitchen, back against the cabinet, lights off, while the city pulsed around me, alive and uncaring. That was the bottom. And from there, something unexpected happened. I broke, but not in the way I feared. I let go of their voices, of the expectations, of the idea that I'd ever be good enough for them, or that I needed to be. It started small. I took a long walk through Central Park without my phone, sat on a bench for an hour and just watched strangers pass. Then I went into a bookstore and bought a novel, fiction, not business, something about time travel and regret. I read it in 2 days. I started saying yes to things again, quiet things. Coffee with an old college friend who worked in nonprofit tech, a dinner invite from my neighbor who always asked about the view from my balcony. I stopped performing, just showed up as myself. I called Grandma one night and we talked for 3 hours. Not about wills or money, just life. She told me about her first job as a switchboard operator and how she used to knit during her breaks. I told her I'd started sketching again, something I hadn't done since high school. "Send me one," she said. So I did. It was rough, a charcoal drawing of the skyline at dusk, but she framed it. "You've got your own way of seeing the world," she told me. "Never let anyone take that from you." Something shifted after that. Work got better, not because anything changed, but because I did. I started mentoring younger devs on our team, took pride in helping them find their footing. I stopped obsessing over the next milestone and started enjoying the ones I'd already reached. Then one day, I got a message from a woman named Tara. She was a producer at a documentary startup, one of those edgy human story outfits with a niche cult following. She'd seen my name on a Forbes list and dug deeper. Saw the interviews I'd done, the open source libraries I'd helped build. She wanted to do a short feature on me. The quiet founder, she called me, the anti-spotlight tech guy. I hesitated. Part of me still flinched at the thought of being seen, but another part, a newer, stronger part, leaned in. We filmed for a week. Nothing fancy, just me in my apartment, walking through the city, talking about building things when no one's watching, about being invisible and how sometimes that's where the real work gets done. It went viral, not overnight, but slowly, the way good things grow. The comment section was full of people saying they felt seen, that they related, that they too had been overlooked in their families, that my story made them feel less alone. I cried, not dramatically, just quietly, sitting in the dark, laptop open, reading strangers say the words I'd waited my whole life to hear from my own family. That was when I realized something. I didn't need their permission to matter. I never did. But still, just when I'd found peace, just when I'd stopped caring what they thought, Vanessa came back. And this time, she didn't come alone. She brought lawyers. She brought accusations, and she brought a storm I didn't see coming. When Vanessa re-entered my life, she didn't knock. She kicked the door open with paperwork. It started with a letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. The envelope was thick and heavy, with that smug, embossed logo at the top. I remember holding it in my hands for a moment, just staring at my name in sharp black ink. Carter D. Taylor. There was something cold about it, final, like someone had taken a highlighter to my life and decided this was the chapter where the villain enters. The letter was full of legalese, but the gist was simple. Vanessa was contesting Grandma Dottie's will. Her claim that Grandma wasn't of sound mind, that I had exerted undue influence, that I had manipulated her, a frail elderly woman, into rewriting her estate. One by one, I stitched together a quilt of quiet injustices. I didn't know exactly what I'd use it for yet, but it felt right, like sharpening blades and waiting for the right wind. Then Clara called. Vanessa's team is requesting mediation. I paused. Already? They're nervous. They're trying to find a compromise before this becomes something bigger. I knew what that meant. They wanted hush money. They'd come with big words and fake concern. Let's avoid hurting the family, they'd say. Maybe you keep the house, she gets the accounts. You both walk away. Clara was quiet for a second. You don't have to agree. We can go to court, but mediation is a good place to show strength. I said, book it. We chose a neutral space, a firm in Midtown that specialized in family mediations. Glass walls, soft lighting, no clocks, the kind of place designed to feel safe while tearing people apart. Vanessa walked in wearing all white. Symbolic, I guess. She looked tired, hollow in the eyes, but when she saw me, she smirked like this was just another performance. I didn't speak for the first hour. Her lawyer laid out her concerns in polite tones. They implied Grandma had been confused, that I had isolated her, that I had taken advantage of her fondness for me. Clara let them finish. Then she opened the binder and began, calmly, ruthlessly, flipping through the exhibits. Medical forms, emails, testimonies, voicemails from Grandma that said things like, I know they won't understand, but I want to do this for Carter. He's earned it. Vanessa didn't flinch, not once. She waited until it was her turn to speak, and that's when she made her final move. I'm just saying, she said, her voice syrupy, it's interesting that Carter became close to Grandma right after she sold those old paintings, the ones we didn't know were valuable. Clara raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting financial misconduct? She shrugged. I don't know. I just think it's interesting. That was her new strategy, not just to paint me as manipulative, but as dangerous. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about the inheritance. It never was. It was about control. She couldn't bear the thought that I had something she didn't. Not money, not property, but dignity, legacy. The one thing she'd chased her entire life and never earned. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. I took all the stories, the emails, the evidence, the recordings, and I started building a story. Not just for the court, but for the world. I called it The Other Son. What happens when the quiet one speaks? I didn't post it, not yet. I was still waiting for the final piece, because I'd found something else. Something in Grandma's storage in it that she had forgotten about. Something from years ago. And when I opened the box and saw what it was, everything changed. Everything. The box was labeled 1978 to 2004, personal. Just a simple piece of masking tape and Grandma's faded handwriting in blue marker. It had been sitting untouched in a storage unit she rented back when she sold her old house. I never would have found it if I hadn't offered to help her clear the space out. I thought it'd be old sweaters, family photos, maybe some dusty knickknacks. But inside that box was the final nail in Vanessa's perfectly polished coffin. There were 2 journals, thick, leather-bound, worn from years of flipping pages. At first, I hesitated. It felt invasive. But Grandma was beside me, sitting in a folding chair with a blanket over her knees. She nodded and said, Go on. I saved them for a reason. So I opened them. What I found wasn't just family history. It was a record. A quiet witness to everything I'd been gaslit into forgetting. Entries spanning decades, descriptions of birthdays, holidays, report cards. My name came up often. How I'd always tried to help in the kitchen. How I made Grandma laugh when I was 5 by pretending to be a robot. How my mom never attended a single one of my science fairs. How Vanessa once took a scholarship form I was supposed to apply for and threw the application away so I wouldn't embarrass her. There were copies of letters Grandma had sent to my parents, begging them to treat me with more care. Copies of their replies, cold, dismissive, always circling back to, Vanessa needs our attention right now. One entry stopped me cold. May 2nd, 2006. Carter asked me today why his parents don't come to his chess tournaments. He was so quiet when he said it. He looked down the whole time. I wanted to cry. I told him they were busy. But the truth is, Janice told me Carter's not really a performer, that he's not built for competition. I think about that night a lot, how a child can already understand what it means to be unwanted. I put the journal down. My chest felt heavy, not with sadness, but something closer to confirmation. The kind of grief that comes not from surprise, but from recognition, like finally finding the piece that proves your puzzle wasn't broken. It was just missing something. This was it. This was what I needed. The next week, I called Clara. I want to go to court, I said. No settlement, no mediation. I want everything on the record. Clara paused. You sure? She started this, I said. Let me finish it. We filed for trial, and while court prepared its wheels, I prepared my own. The documentary piece I had started, The Other Son, wasn't just a vanity project anymore. I turned it into a full narrative, not just about me, but about children who were sidelined, gaslit, erased in favor of a more promising sibling. The overlooked, the underestimated. I partnered with Tara's media group, and we built out a short web doc, just 22 minutes. Personal stories, expert interviews, footage from my childhood, screenshots, and yes, select pages from Grandma's journals. We changed names where necessary, but anyone in my family watching would know exactly what they were seeing. I didn't release it yet. That would come later, at the perfect time. Trial day. Vanessa arrived with a team of 3 lawyers, expensive suits, briefcases, lipstick that looked like it had been airbrushed on. I arrived with Clara and Grandma. The judge was a no-nonsense type. Gray hair, small glasses, the kind of woman who'd seen through every trick in the book. From the jump, Clara controlled the room, calm, focused. She brought up the medical documentation, the timestamps, the signed letters, the video testimony we had recorded with Grandma months earlier, the one where she clearly stated in her own words, "I'm not being pressured. I know what I'm doing. Carter has always been there for me. This is my choice." Then Vanessa's team started to poke holes. They brought up my sudden interest in the family. They tried to suggest I had always been withdrawn, calculating, emotionally distant. Vanessa testified. She cried, told the court she loved Grandma, that she was only fighting for what's fair, that she didn't want to do this, but she had to because she was afraid Grandma had been misled. Then Clara stood up and asked one question. "Miss Taylor, do you recall ever taking steps to limit Carter's academic opportunities?" Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me? Did you ever interfere with scholarships, applications, college opportunities?" Vanessa's lawyer stood up. "Objection." The judge held up a hand. "Answer the question." Vanessa shifted in her seat. "No, of course not." Clara nodded. "Then perhaps you can explain this." She walked over, set a plastic sleeve on the evidence table. Inside, a crumpled scholarship form. My name at the top. Vanessa's handwriting in the margins. "He's not even going to get in. Just don't give him hope."
Vanessa froze. Her lawyer looked like they wanted to melt into their seat. Clara wasn't done. She brought out the journals. Not all of them, just the relevant entries, the ones that showed a consistent, years-long pattern of emotional neglect, manipulation, and silencing. She read them slowly, letting the silence after each word hang heavy in the air. And then, finally, the closing argument. Clara stood, hands folded, and said, "This is not about inheritance. This is about acknowledgement, about a family that built its world around one child and discarded the other. And now that child, the quiet one, is simply receiving what his grandmother believes he deserves, not because he asked, but because he earned it." The verdict? In my favor, completely. The court upheld Grandma's will as valid and legally unchallengeable. Vanessa was ordered to pay partial court fees for filing a frivolous contestation. She left the courtroom without a word. But I wasn't done. That night, I released the documentary. It didn't go viral overnight. It went viral in hours. Tens of thousands of views, then hundreds of thousands, then national interviews. People reached out from everywhere. Adult children, therapists, journalists thanking me for putting something so invisible into words. Some even recognized my story as theirs. I received thousands of messages, some long, some just 2 words.
thank you. The fallout for Vanessa? Her residency offer, one she'd recently reapplied for, was quietly withdrawn. Her public social media went dark. Family friends distanced themselves. A few called me privately to say, "We had no idea." I didn't respond to most of them, because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity. It was about finally saying, this happened. I was here. I mattered. Mom called eventually, left a voicemail. "I don't know why you did all this, Carter, but I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't call back. Grandma and I spent her next birthday together on my balcony, watching the city lights dance against the skyline. She looked at me and said, "Took long enough, huh?" "Yeah," I said, smiling, "but I got here." And as the sun began to rise over the city we both loved, I finally let the past rest, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I had nothing left to prove. The quiet one never stays quiet forever. Sometimes he just waits until everyone's listening.